Hello, my wonderful besties. I hope you're all well, and today we're discussing all things polyamory. Yes, polyamory, the term used for describing couples comprising more than two people, messy drama, and everything in between. And nothing exemplifies this more than the nostalgic sphere of reverse harem. If you don't know what that is, bless your chronically offline heart. During the retro days of anime, these large casts of savory bishonen pranced their way to an attractive girl to garner her attention. But reverse harem is more than just a subgenre of romance. It's an onion, and like onions, they have a lot of layers. If you were an avid shoujo fan and scrolled through your watch history from the 90s through 2010s, you could expect the heroine you were watching to entertain multiple suitors for her hand. If it was Boys Over Flowers, Tsukushi donned some combination of bad boys, quiet luxury boys, model boys, best friend boys, self-proclaimed arch-rival boys, bliss. If it was Hanasakuru Sei Shonen, you'd find Kajika enchanting the likes of a snow leopard, rich businessman, and her cousin, because that was a thing. If you have the pleasure of viewing Kiss Him, Not Me, Kai would be subject to the popular crowd hoarding over her, despite the chagrinant cause for her fujoshi tendencies. In retrospect, the way reverse harem employed romance or affectionate interactions was at best camp, or at worst, vomit-inducing. No character, storyline, or taboo topic was off limits. Insanity was prime time on the agenda. No series would be complete without forced kisses, reckless shenanigans, and ill-advised dating advice. While many of the series have been torn to shreds in recent years, by myself included, some have transcended the ludicrous realm and resided in the idiosyncratic but legendary island. Ponder Sangoku Monogatari's take on women becoming court officials, Fushigi Yugi transforming lived experience in the time capsule of a play, and honestly, most series that took place in a historical setting. If I had one word to describe a reverse harem anime, it would be flashy. The protagonists in these shows had a certain vibrancy that differed from other mediums. Haruhi was cross-dressing to work at a host club, Nanami became a land god, Ritsuka possessed the forbidden grimoire, and Katarina was reborn into an otome game. It made sense for the stories to be absurd because so were the characters and the universes they existed in. These shows also had to compete with regular harems to hold our attention, and they did that by being severely unhinged. While reverse harem was the bread and butter for many, escaping the pressures life puts on us, the aspect that felt rooted in reality had to be the community. This was the era of chat forums, Kick, and 3-part anime episodes on YouTube. Watching these shows wasn't an isolated experience. You had someone relating to you hiding under your covers and salivating over hot anime men. Some of us did have strict parents who loomed over our shoulders, especially regarding what we searched on the internet, which ironically translated into the widespread intrigue of taboos employed in the reverse harem genre. In a 2015 article for Anime News Network, writer Rose Bridges details the growing appeal of divisive subject matter in female-oriented romance. Girls like to think themselves capable of rescuing their partners, but because tangible female power is still distrusted in society, this is usually more of an emotional rescue. So female-targeted anime is full of bad boys, revealed to have tormented past. It's up to the heroine with her big heart and infinite patience to unlock the sweetheart buried deep down beneath this mountain of torment. It's also why so many girls seek out fan service that's full of the constant threat of violence. It keeps the viewer on her toes, constantly engaged with the story to see what will happen next. Slow burns can be nice, but they also lose momentum quickly in the wrong hands. At least terror is always exciting, and it's not too far of a jump from the excitement of fear to the excitement of arousal. When I think of the word arousal, it has a sexual innuendo to it. Growing up Christian, it was a no-brainer. Entering someone's V-card will not happen until a ring is on their hand. Exploring one's sexuality is generally accepted when you're locked in holy matrimony. In certain social circles, not abiding by these ideals can make you susceptible to having impure thoughts. The recent conversations surrounding romance fiction have moved as a pendulum. What constitutes entertainment? are wish fulfillment romances outdated? Or is controversial romance media a way to navigate untapped feelings surrounding attraction and sexuality? So that's what I want to explore today, the unprecedented phase many of us had with reverse harem, and how this genre continues to remain resonant even to this day. That's what I wanted to say, but unfortunately, the virtual masses eviscerated me for uttering that this era could be called a phase.
I can't stand when you're so desperate that you start getting vindictive.
In the olden days of shoujo romance, it was a Wild West, and these stories oftentimes would resemble a dating reality show. Shoujo anime has become increasingly civilized with the romance genre, primarily due to the aftermath caused by natural disasters. But aptly put, romance as a medium has been primarily viewed as escapist media. And what better way to escape reality than create a premise that very few people would have in their lives? A harem. The term harem has its roots in Middle Eastern culture and is defined by the Oxford English Dictionary as a private or secluded location, a room characterized by luxury or devoted to pleasure, or a place frequented by women. In a Japanese context, harem is also referred to as harumomono, which stands for a polygamous relationship in which one person receives attention from numerous people. In reverse harem, aka gyaku harem, this translates to a regular smuggler girl enticing several handsome boys. Some of the early appearances of the reverse harem trope crept up in the 80s with series such as Soridemo Chikyu wa Mawataru and Fusamaland 4.5. Both of these utilize the high school setting alongside whimsical adventures and the female protagonist's daily lives. While the early days of reverse harem cultivated a wholesome, fantastical image, the post-90s boom took a turn for the mature. In the case of wish fulfillment romances, the mundanity of slice of life is deemed too boring or uneventful to suck in viewers. Fushigi Yugi ignited the soap opera approach to romance, which famously features the main priestesses commingling with their celestial warriors. Shortly after Fushigi Yugi, Boys Over Flowers followed suit with its assortment of eligible bachelors for our heroine. Tsukushi's interactions with Rui, Tsukasa, and Junpei marked a significant departure from the flighty romance associated with shoujo. The series was particularly notable for its raw approach to bullying and unfiltered way of depicting enemies to lovers. This marked a shift in fandom culture regarding shipping, as more outlandish male characters became the more desirable option. Around this time, reverse harem was ready to usher in a new generation of fans, a group of people who have a less than stellar reputation but have contributed to the widespread success of anime as a whole. Fujoshi. While we often associate their impact with propelling BL and shonen to the limelight, they've also helped pioneer the success of reverse harem. The exotification and physical attributes of boys in these works played a significant role in popularizing the manga to otome game pipeline. The series Angelique provided a launching pad for the international acclamation of otome games and used good-looking men as a tangible symbol of the appeal. As one of the Koei Tecmo founders, Keiko Arakawa, put it, "If we're going to make a game marketed toward women, we better put our whole weight into making it for women. The protagonist had to be a cute girl and her clothes had to be red. The interior should be girly pink and pink. We also wanted to have all sorts of lovely men appear in the game. We set the theme in Greek mythology and created male characters with a ton of individuality." This aligned with the inverse of what harem presented with its female characters. They are showcased as merely props to be looked and ogled at, suggesting that a relationship is not the primary focus for the protagonist regardless of the ensemble cast who make up their harem. We must remember that harem and reverse harem by proxy aren't always romantic in nature. Some tend to lean more comedic or dramatic, with romance on the back burner, and if it is depicted, it's often subtextual. Scenes depicting these situations are mostly fan service for the viewer, which in this case would be fujoshi. With that, homoerotic developments and perspectives would start being introduced. Probably the most notable example, just by how much it's plastered as the face of reverse harem, has to be Kiss Him, Not Me. In it, our protagonist, Guy Serinuma, is a fujoshi who undergoes a Cinderella-esque transformation and attracts 4 popular boys at school who are entranced by her appearance. However, Kai enjoys being a spectator, watching others fall in love, specifically if those people are 2 men. So when she's forced to go from observer to participant, Kai gets flustered and essentially has entered a new world. She goes from upholding these boys on a pedestal from her erotic fantasies to simply enjoying their presence and creating profound friendships with them. This is why she has trouble choosing which boy she wants to ultimately be with, since she's often been sidelined on the field of love. Each of the boys are presented with distinct traits and qualities and are formed based on various masculine archetypes. The playboy, the cool and collected, the doe-eyed ditzy cutie. I'm not gonna name any names of where you've seen these tropes before. However, in the end, Kai only ends up choosing one boy to romance, Mutsumi, and she definitely made the right choice. The protagonist's decisions regarding their love interests are largely based on their experiences. The other boys serve as a backdrop for people being able to insert themselves in their roots. This allowed viewers to explore relationships with other boys in the story and get a bigger picture with their relationship to the heroine. In anime, this would be shown in a dedicated episode where Mun Boy's aspirations and goals to be with the heroine were the primary focus. This can be especially helpful if the heroine decides to remain alone, or you go into an alternate ending that is not definitively in the canon. All of these components shaped how reverse harem was viewed and made with girls and women in mind. The sheer spending power alone on these properties should be evidence enough. Reverse harem transformed itself from solely manga to a whole industry, featuring books, light and visual novels, video and mobile games, and the trope itself extrapolated outside Japan. If companies think reverse harem will attract an international consumer base, it means more TV shows watched, more merchandise sold, and ultimately,
It's all about the Benjamins, baby.
I think this translated into the type of male characters we see in reverse harem. Anyone perceived as beautiful yet polarizing was prioritized. In hindsight, many of us rewatching these series are kind of just like, what the hell was that girl choosing that man? Get that hell out of there. As teens with rose-tinted glasses, that's why we loved these dynamics so much. The chaos ensued blended in with the wackiness of their universes. The largely formulaic plot served the medium's purpose. Something I do find interesting is the difference in objectives reverse harem had when it came to shoujo manga versus otome games, specifically regarding otome game anime adaptations. Otome games are a good example to contrast shoujo manga because although they have similar audiences, otome games were more on the, oh shit, we need a concrete marketing plan, so let's seek out animation studios to handle advertising on a global scale. Otome games were something that I really enjoyed as a teen, especially Mystic Messenger and Kissed by the Baddest Bitter. I will say, when I watched Reverse Harem adapted from shoujo manga, all the male characters behaved idiosyncratically. They would all harbor feelings for their love interests for relatively innocuous reasons, and that was similar with otome games. However, looking at how otome games portrayed relationships compared to shoujo manga, it's considerably different. You would often find the male characters being much more forceful with their pursuits, and the female characters would be significantly more submissive and docile. This signified a young, attractive girl typically working to make ends meet who catches the eye of several powerful, elite, rich men. Survey results for monthly gaming magazines Beast Logs even indicated that alpha males were among the highest searched terms in those mediums. Terms such as Gomen, Dokusenyoku, and Akaratsu reign supreme for female gamers, elevated relationship taste goals. If this isn't the American equivalent of real short movies, I don't know what is. If you've been on TikTok before the Orange Man took office again, you know. These series clearly had a type, and it was boisterous, commanding, and prosperous men. The reasoning for this archetype in otome games is significantly more darker, dystopian, and might give you pause. Japanese women indulging in harnessing connections with digital characters is unfortunately frowned upon. Since the target audience ranged from 15 to 35-year-olds, most of them were unmarried and enjoying their life in solitude. Single status women began reaching all-time highs since the 90s, with the average age of marriage increasing from 26 and a half years to nearly 30 years of age. This is partly due to the fear of losing their independence from the notion that married women slowly drift away from the workforce to take care of their families. Women who don't abide by this ideal are branded as otori-sama and are responsible for the declining birth rate in the country.
Hiroto Murasawa of Osaka Shoin Women's University talked about how in Japan, single women in their 30s are sometimes referred to as leftover Christmas cake, aka they're no good after the 25th.
Okay. Whatever that means.
Otome games were seen as a medium for women to escape this reality by creating a space to vent out these frustrations, thereby alleviating worries centered around financial resources, living freely, and having a right to exist and thrive as single women. However, there's a catch-22. Economic implications. Working conditions in Japan weren't exactly pleasant, which made it harder for men to enter the marriage market, apart from being severely burnt out from working all the time. While some women were relieved not to be subject to an archaic view of life, others were concerned to not have marriage as an option and take advantage of those opportunities when they become available for it, especially since media for girls frequently glamorize this type of lifestyle. Angelique started the trend of confronting this issue, which progressed onward to its contemporaries. However, otome game anime, like anything else, are not without their problems. Some studios don't fully comprehend the scope of their audience, which unfortunately took its toll on their visual novel and game counterparts. In terms of male character representation, that would be employed through the yandere, specifically in series such as Amnesia and Diabolic Lovers. These really stand out compared to other otome, since their female lead's bodily autonomy is heavily constricted. The main issue that arises with Amnesia and Diabolic Lovers is how these series were marketed when they were transported in the West. Their animes would frequently be tagged as a reverse harem romance, with no trigger warnings for the content that's being shown, which is a recipe for controversy and disaster, especially considering both of these series received English dubs and are available to stream on Crunchyroll. I remember watching these animes as a teen, and it felt illegal, especially considering I had heavily monitored internet access. But I think many people felt the same way. These series then and now feel too voyeuristic. And if you disagree with me, you need Jesus. Get out of here.
I'm entitled to have my opinion.
And I'm entitled to my... Why are you entitled, Holly, and not me?
You're entitled to your wrong opinion. That's fine.
Bam!
In all seriousness, these types of games had a very specific demographic in which they were geared to, but they ended up cultivating a broader audience in the States. Due to the anime's categorization as a romance, it's hard to determine if the sadistic and masochistic crowd of young adult women was indeed their audience. But these types of otome games did benefit from their female protagonist sexuality by capitalizing on their virginity. As a sociologist Laura M. Carpenter from Vanderbilt University explains, this seemingly contradictory sexualization of virginity is a really old cultural trope, one rooted in upholding and reaffirming men's power over women and their bodies. Historically, there's been this idea that for men, in particular, the idea of deflowering a woman is supposed to be the ultimate form of something. That somehow imprinting yourself on somebody or being the one who introduces them to all the wonders of partner sexuality makes you more special, more manly, more something. Regardless of the more controversial aspects of otome games leading into patriarchal pitfalls that its conception initially critiqued, the genre's purpose is mostly fan service, and people do understand the authorial intent. But I do think the political climate surrounding the perception of women entering marriage influence how these relationships were depicted in these series. By the late 2010s, the ubiquity of reverse harem seemed to slowly grind to a halt. The next generation of series were not as potent with dubious consent as their predecessors, and I think that's a good thing. It's kind of funny looking back at reverse harem and how romance anime has evolved over the years. People seem to want to have more divisive and polarizing stories simply because they're very entertaining, as well as also the conversation surrounding media literacy and cultural awareness when it comes to more flawed works. I have a weird relationship when it comes to that because I do think people's inability to think critically about the media they're consuming goes both ways. You know, likening a series that's controversial as something that can't be engaged with at all, while also stating that because the work is fictional, it's devoid of criticism. It's a slippery slope that I often fall into. However, I just think overall we need to be a lot more sensitive of everyone's perspectives and of course their life experiences with these type of topics. It's also important to look at the context and bigger picture of why this type of subject matter was portrayed in these stories in the first place. Women historically had restrictions on the type of art they were allowed to create. One of the primary reasons for the creation of otome games was to provide women a space to not follow the strict dictation of motherhood. Women decided to take action against systems that limit their artistic expression, which translated into multiple avenues for women to be able to enter relationships or even marriage, whether that be wholesome and sweet or a never-ending nightmare. This could also be applied to shoujo mangaka as well. I mainly think about Yu Watase, who often depicts messy relationships with men mistreating women and how dark and traumatic those type of experiences can be. She's also someone that was trying to come to terms with her gender identity as a feminine presenting non-binary person, and I think that's why a lot of her stories are so resonant with this demographic of readership. To bring it back to the beginning of how reverse harem is still relevant, I think we are in a time where we all want to mindlessly consume. There's so many unknowns in the world right now, and I think people are just trying to find an escape. In the wise words of Dr. Holly, reverse harem merely boils down to this.
I mean, was it perfect? No, I think everyone made a mistake. Was it seamless? Was it flawless? No. Nope. It wasn't any of those things, but it sure was entertaining.
Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, you know the drill, and I'll see you guys soon for my next one. Until next time, bye!